to LOA Today. I'm Walt.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
It's a special anniversary because 11 years ago today, I recorded with my now ex-wife the first episode of LOA Today. And then 11 episodes later, I interviewed a gentleman that I met through Twitter, I think, named Joel Elston, who still here after all these years. So that's pretty cool. Shockingly, yeah, right. But this is a day of mixed feelings for me because it's exciting to have completed now 11 years doing the show. But this date also has the mixed feeling in that, like I said, I did the first episode with my ex-wife. This was our wedding anniversary. This is the first year that I'm experiencing a wedding anniversary on a relationship that is now over. And that's a new feeling. I mean, we talk a lot in life about the different, the milestones we reach and the events that happen and so forth. That's not one that I ever thought about. And it's kind of, I mean, I can't say it's weighed on my mind today. It really hasn't, but it's just one of those things that's like, oh yeah, I don't really celebrate that anymore. That's really strange. It's a strange feeling. So I figured milestones becomes like the topic for the day. And I think we have, Joel, the perfect guy to join us on this, Dr. Ken Martz, your very good friend. Just based on our conversation last time that we had Dr. Ken on the show, the insights that he gave us then tells me I'm going to get some pretty good insights today about these milestones. So Dr. Ken, welcome. Welcome back, I should say. How you doing?
Thank you. Glad to be back always. So great discussion. Glad to be here on a special day. Funny thing about milestones, they often have mixed elements to them. So emotions are exactly like that. They end up having a whole range of it, depending upon what becomes forefront, and can we be aware of that so we can begin to recognize it and shift as needed sometimes.
Yeah,
we can shift a little bit of what becomes forefront,
which is good news, by the way.
Yes. It's like I do a lot of work with meditation as well, and that's exactly the practice of the meditation. It's like, I sit there for 2 seconds, and all of a sudden my mind goes squirrel, and I get to pull it back to no, I want to practice this feeling right now. Squirrel. Oh yeah, no, I'm practicing gratitude today. Squirrel. Oh, gratitude. So we can actually, we can't necessarily stop the mind from wandering to where we don't want it, but we can start to steer it a little bit and emphasize those elements of the milestone or of the day, that will most serve us. Like I can dig in and focus on how it's a rainy day today and life sucks today, versus this is a special day. I get to hang out with really cool people and talk about some cool stuff and have some fun. It's all true, but where we bring our emotion or our attention and intention makes a world of difference. So,
somehow, Joel, this doesn't surprise me. This is the kind of thing you and I have talked about for years. It's almost like he grabbed your script. I mean,
yes.
Did you guys coordinate before you got going here? I don't know.
Several years ago, we coordinated.
Several years ago, okay.
Yeah. But everything milestones. My answer for everything is perspective. Milestones are perspective based, and where you some of the greatest days of my life. When Ken used to work with me at Williamsville Wellness, and I'll speak on my departure when I was randomly next in line to be pulled out and culled from the herd and sent on my way on a random Saturday. That was a really shocking day to be all of a sudden running a treatment center and then not doing that. That could have been a really bad day. That could be a milestone that was a really bad day. But the catalyst of that event sent me to the ability to have my own practice and train. So I actually look at that day as it is a milestone, but I wasn't going to leave Williamsville Wellness voluntarily. And so that propelled me to something I didn't think I would be able to do, or never really, I thought about it, but didn't expect it to happen. So that milestone is perspective based. Either I lost that job or it set me on my way to the next part of my path. And I get to choose which perspective that milestone holds in my brain.
Yeah.
Well, part of that also is being self-aware enough to realize you have the option to choose.
Yes. Oh,
Right.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
and that is everything. So I love the idea that when Ken said before the show started, how you look at things sort of determines how things are. Things change depending on how you look at them. The Wayne Dyer quote, but that is milestones. Your milestone. Well, I have understanding that this was your anniversary, but me personally, the 11 year is the 11th anniversary of the show is the milestone to me that my energy is at today. I'm just so proud of you for all that work you've done and where you've gone that way. So again, it's perspective based. It's from where you sit, and the ultimate power in any of this is your perspective creates your reality, and you're in charge of your perspective. It's that simple, and it applies perfectly here.
Yeah.
Well, if it's that simple, why do we have so much trouble with it?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean,
because 90% of our lives is spent on autopilot, and if we go into a negative autopilot, it causes some issues. It's like, in one of my offices, I used to have a poster that was, as I understand it, in Chinese, it's a pictorial language, and so the picture is that of a man standing on top of a mountain, and that word refers to crisis. And so you're on top of the mountain. You could fall off the mountain. You're in great danger. Well, that same picture is also the word for opportunity. Because if you were in olden times, you would go up on top of the mountains. You could see where the armies were. You could see where things were. It's very protective. It's one of the safest places you could be to be protected. So it's that yin yang thing where the perspective matters. If I see this as a crisis, I'm going to my day is going to suck. And if I see it as opportunity or milestone of, my gosh, how far have we come in 11 years? World of difference to live in and play in. And actually gives a little more room to breathe too.
Well, and Ken, the really good point you're making that you said a second ago, we're an autopilot, a subconscious programming that does that most of the time. So when you choose your perspective and or when your perspective is dictated to you, or you think it is, losing my job and me being a single parent and not knowing what that, my initial reaction was, oh my gosh, this is catastrophic. But the reality is I was in incredible financial shape at the time. I had developed a great network of people, and within 2 weeks I'd opened my own practice. So my perspective, once I was able to adjust it, it was my central nervous system didn't respond in a fight or flight, concept. It responded in, all right, this is that next step. Thank goodness I was able to make it. And one of the things that the politics or the whatever you want to call it, the dynamics of the company at the time, there was this one individual that was sort of behind the scenes undermining all of us and moving us along. Well, that person had no intention of anything good happening for me. But if she wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have the life I had today. So, of course, me, a few years ago, I wrote her that email thanking her for the gift of betrayal, thanking her for what she had done. And
I love that.
And of course, she didn't respond, but I was very sincere. If she didn't do that, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't have done that next step. So the perspective, even in our worst events, I've had one event in my life that I'm never going to adjust the perspective of, and that's the death of my son, TJ. But the rest of the stuff, I have been able to, I talk about me eating out of the garbage can, in 1988, that led to an incredible chain event. I changed my perspective of that into something that, while certainly not, I don't want to do that again. That was a necessary event in my growth process along the way. So the milestones they have gravity, but we don't realize we often have power over that gravity of what, at least the direction of what we do with that.
Right.
Ken, did you notice what I noticed? I mean, when Joel was telling the bit about how he left the wellness center, and then 2 weeks later he got the opportunity to start a private practice. That's the way that was his perspective on it. The rest of us would think about that saying, oh, he decided to open his doors and to see what he could. No. What actually happened was his doors filled up in 2 weeks. The way he told the story was, oh, I decided to open a practice.
Yeah. But open the doors and people are there. Wait a minute.
Yeah, there they are. Right.
Well, they were. That was the thing. My mentor and dear friend, Dr. Master, I went and talked to all the doctors in town. He started referring people, and within 2 weeks of me opening, I was pretty much full, which is unheard of to go from. And in 2013, life coaching was sort of I don't think there was many life coaches. I might have been the only life coach in Richmond at the time. So it was a concept that, wow, and all of a sudden I was full. So but that was an opportunity. That is how my perspective of it is now. The beauty of going backwards, you can go back and sort of redo your perspective, even though if it was a bad thing at the time. The value of the rearview mirror, looking back on things, seeing how things worked out, you can actually go reprogram that to the. Turns out that was a really big event in my life. It was one of the most consequential events of my life that literally gave me what I have today.
Right. And that's actually a conversation I have with a lot of folks in the addictions process. It's like, not that I want anyone ever to experience the struggle there, but very often, once getting free from that bondage, free from that past, it's often seen as that springboard that brought them to a fuller life that, addiction was kind of side filling, but they've always wanted, but not been able to get to, so sometimes those challenges become the springboard forward into, now I can actually have a full, rich life, that rather than the half life that got me into the struggle in the first place. Again, not that I want anybody to have to go through that path to find that, but that's often the work for all of us. How do we steer into, remember, to be all that, is possible?
That's so good point. That's such a great point, because the ping pong effect or the pinball effect of bouncing from one thing to the other, when it feels like things are out of control and you have no control of this process, it's easy to feel like you're the victim of, or, my addiction was a horrible addiction. I would not want anyone to go, through what I went through. It was ridiculous. It's like, wow, I can't believe I went through the stuff I went through. However, that chain of events once again led to the chain of events, which led to the chain of events. And I'm not the man I am today without my addiction. My addiction brought me my recovery. My recovery brought me to understanding the law of attraction. It brought me to meeting people like you and Ken. It really changed my life. So I don't view that anymore as, I'll never view it as pleasant, because none of it's pleasant. But I do view it as my view is that was the life I was intended to live. I could not have gotten down this path without that exact set of circumstances happening in that exact same order.
What makes this conversation really interesting is what we're talking about here is a kind of milestone, but it's not the kind of milestone we normally celebrate. I mean, the milestones we normally celebrate, our birthdays, anniversaries, some special trip that we took, or, things along that order, bought a house, started a family. Those are the milestones we don't usually measure. Well, I had to eat out of a dumpster. I mean, it's not normally the way we do these things. And yet, look what's coming out of that conversation. Like, this milestone was really significant, even though I don't celebrate it every year.
Yeah. It's just like the crisis opportunity issue. It's like, is this a job loss, or is this an opening of the life that I've been meaning to live? Is this an addiction process, or is this the breaking free into something that is very pleasurable? A loss, or, my gosh, it's a reflection of how much I've loved in life.
Yes.
They're all flip sides.
Well, the answer to your question, it is yes. It's all of that. It's the ability to press the button and say, I'm choosing this side. I was, I could tell you my entire story from, birth until now. And there's a period of time, and there's people that have, been in my history that, depending on where they left off in the story, I am one of the more despicable characters to walk the face of the earth, or I'm beneficial to society. I'm grateful, and you're right. I have been both of those, and I'm the the biggest loser of all time, or have one of the greatest comebacks you could ever imagine, and I'm in charge of how I tell that story and narrative, what I believe, regardless of what anybody else wants to tell the story as.
Yeah, that's true. I'm reflecting back here, since this is a double anniversary or a former anniversary, depending on how you express it. I'm reflecting back to a year ago, because it was about 10 days after the anniversary that my ex-wife left me and sent me into a pretty big spiral downward. And of course, Joel was one of the people I reached out to. I'm seeing a comment from somebody in the live stream, Anne-Marie McEwen, a good friend, another person I reached out to. But when I was going through that process, the last thing I thought about was, well, this is a milestone where I'm going to learn so much out of it, and there's going to be such great. No, that was the last thing that was going on. But you know what? Looking back a year later, my God, I learned a lot out of this.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, and you grew stronger from that. From my perspective, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I think you see life differently now. I've noticed there's sort of a inner strength in you that I think you feel more secure now, believe it or not.
I do. It's true. It is true. Yeah. Again, like you expressed it, I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through it that way to get there.
Right.
But by the same token, this is one of those things that kind of haunts me in many of the conversations we have here on the show and just in general in life. Why do we have to go through so much pain in order to get the best growth? But why can't we just can't we just buy it at Walmart? I mean, it would be so much simpler.
Yeah, I see it a little different. I appreciate that. But I also believe that we weren't put here to be fragile. We weren't put here. The stuff I went through was incredibly tough. My childhood was tough. A lot of things were tough, but I have survived that. I'm more resilient because of it all. So I guess it would be nicer to have an easier, kinder, gentler path, but I haven't ever done things that way. But it still
raises the question: why is it we all? Because this is a very definite human pattern. I mean, it's not just you, me, and Ken. I mean, this is like humanity does this on a regular basis. Yeah. Why do we have to go that route, you think?
Or why do we get to go that route again? Another
okay, yeah.
Because
real quick, when you're at the fair, you don't ride the merry-go-round. You get on the Hulk down at Universal Studios. You don't ride the kiddie ride. You ride the one that's 75 miles an hour with an upside down turn. So that's what we do.
Well, and I got to pick on, because I know Joel's gonna pick on this one too. Because
of course,
how do we grow? You go to the gym, you pump some iron, and you shred a couple of muscles and they grow back stronger. Physically, we grow stronger through the challenges. When a seed breaks out, opening the shell, that's how we grow stronger. When a butterfly, it's in its cocoon, it needs to struggle to get out. That's where it gets the strength to be able to fly, or else it's going to die.
Yeah.
That struggle is part of what propels us. And I like what Joel said before about the ping pong. It gives us that contrast to really get that growth forward. They go together.
It reminds me of a conversation, Joel, that you and I had a number of years ago on the contrast between struggle and suffering.
Yes.
Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Because in that conversation, we really differentiate between the two with some pretty cool stories too, as I remember. And I think everybody kind of came away from it realizing suffering is a choice. Struggle is a selection.
Struggle is growth. Struggle is growth. Suffering is actually, it's miserable. You're stuck. But struggle is growth. The obstacle is the way. My clients who know me real well, this is one of my favorite stories. This kid calls me one time. It's like he's a young guy, like 16, so it's like a Friday night. And he calls me. He's like, "Oh my God, I got two choices, and these were job opportunities. I don't know what to do." And I go, "Which one's the hardest?" And he goes, "Damn it!" And he just hung up. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I thought, I said, oh my gosh. So I texted him. I said, I didn't mean to upset you. And he goes, no, I know the answer now. You want me to take the more challenging? And I go, yes, of course. I'm going to tell you that. but you know, this is stoicism. Marcus Aurelius. You know, the obstacle is the way. If you don't know which way to go, find the biggest pushback and go do that, because that's going to make you stronger. The strengthening process is the hardest process.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's reminding me of something that Mike Dooley said. Mike Dooley once observed that he actually was telling a story about his own experience. This is before he became Mike Dooley, the famous speaker and writer and so forth. And he was just Mike Dooley, the struggling human being trying to figure out how life works. And he tells the story about how he had 3 different career choices. One was the sucky choice. Then there was a second one that was the suckier choice, and then finally there was the suckiest choice.
Yes,
and that's what he had to choose from. And
yes.
and his response to the whole situation was, pick one.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can do is not pick one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's just that's the life. Sometimes has 3 sucky options, and sometimes you go with the one. You know, but the idea that any action sometimes is better than no action. If you don't know what to do, take an action, because on the other side of that action is going to be options that you're not aware of right now.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, too, when he did make his choice, it ended up leading to him deciding to start an email list, which he called Notes from the Universe, which currently has something around 500,000 subscribers, and has led basically to his entire success. So just a little side notes there.
Yeah. It's kind of like driving. I can only see what's right in front of me. It's not that the road doesn't go long beyond where I can see, but if I drive a little bit further, it opens up all the new options. So kind of trusting to at least move forward rather than just sitting still. No.
Yes.
But it's so easy. It's so easy to sit still, though. I mean, let's be honest. When we're faced with lousy choices everywhere, sometimes we just want to kind of curl up and suck our thumbs for a bit, because who wants to take any of those choices?
But that's the instinct. And I work with a lot of people that believe there's only sucky options available. So they saying, well, no option or no action is going to be necessary. But selling them on the concept of, sometimes the first step is washing your dishes. Sometimes the first step is going to Panera and look for jobs in your laptop instead of sitting at home and doing it. Sometimes, because you just never know. I'm a big believer in the energy you're putting out is what you're going to get. Obviously, that's what we believe in. And when you go in the direction of, people hate going on vacation for me, because you know how you can imagine how unplanned my vacations are.
Yes.
I just like to go someplace and then do what happens. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'll go to a foreign country and just say, well, let's see what's over here. When's the next train going to that city? Let's just go there. And I just like to see where, because I've always been, I've never been disappointed in where my journey takes me when I allow the journey to take place.
Yeah, that's the popular phrase, isn't it? Celebrate the journey. Don't worry about the destination.
Yeah.
Again, one of those it's a very counterintuitive idea. It's not an idea that no, I want to get to the goal. That's where I'm trying to get to. Enjoy the journey. What are you talking about? I have to eat out of a dumpster. Are you crazy?
Not my stellar moment of the journey, but it certainly was a part of the journey.
Well, and we live our lives with some goals, but 99% again of the journey is where we're living the life. It's like, even if we have a destination and we want to go someplace special, we're still going to do all the steps that it takes to get there. So if you throw away all those steps that it takes to get there, you missed out on a whole heck of a lot of fun and pleasure and learning along the way.
And actually, that is part of what we do believe. We just kind of ignore that part. I know that we believe it because when we go away on vacation, what's the first thing we talk about the plane trip and how we encountered this, and there was a delay at that airport, and this other thing happened. And then we finally got to the destination, and then when we were there, we had the great accommodations, but it rained for the next 3 days. I mean, it's all journey, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But and if you only have the focus on the future, one of the things I always say is you will never, ever be happy anywhere except in the present moment. And so if you're all caught up in the, where am I going to get to this destination a week from now? And, or, by gosh, how bad the plane ride was yesterday. I'm not living in the now. It's the only place I can ever get to happy, so start now,
That's it. And believe it or not, that, not to underestimate that's it. I mean, that's sort of, when you understand that right now is the only possibility of happiness that exists right now. That's it. It's just because that's the only tangible moment we have any connection to. Tomorrow, I might not wake up in the morning. Maybe that's a possibility. Yesterday I can't change, but right now it exists. And when one of the things I just truly have grown, and this comes back to the discussions we used to have, Ken, a lot. I've really, it's really helped me a lot. I truly, and when I say this, I'm not doing this for my brand, so to speak. I really enjoy each day. I laugh every day. I find the most bizarre, I have the weirdest things happen in my day. I love it. And I just look forward to it. I just laugh. I mean, because it's just the most bizarre things happen in my world. And I just have come to, well, I didn't expect that. And for something for me not to expect, I'm like, wow, that bar moved pretty quickly. But every day something happened. But it's an amazing way to live. And then you get up the next day and get to do it again. I have, and I'm not claiming my life's perfect. I deal with things, and I still have other things come with, but I never, I get up every day looking forward to the day. I go to the gym, I do the stuff I do, I talk to my friends, I go do my job, I come home, and I expect that journey. There's always going to be twists and turns. I'm not upset with my journey. Like, it used to be when I first started in practice, when, I'm in session, and then I'm expecting somebody to be in the lobby when I'm done for my next session. It turns out they text me and said they're not coming. In the beginning, I was like, oh my gosh. Now I'm like, oh yeah, thank you. Like, you just gave me an hour. I got a whole hour to do something right now. And and I love my clients, but when those things happen, so it's not a negative anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you clearly learned how to make a choice that fit what you really like and want, rather than some old pre-recorded narrative. I mean, we can kind of look at it objectively that way, but in the emotion of the moment, in the thrill of the moment, it's not always thrilling. We don't always see it that way. We spend a lot of time focused on the future. I mean, Ken, you made the really great point that you can really only be happy in the present, but we're looking to the future for happiness on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So are we crazy, or what is it?
No, it's natural.
I vote yes. I vote yes on the crazy.
You vote yes. Okay.
Yes on the crazy, but not because of that.
Right, exactly.
I think it's a good idea to be a little crazy, but that's another course.
Yeah. We live our lives in the goals, but then life happens. So it's like, there's an old saying, man makes plans and God laughs. We kind of can start with a general direction, but then the storm comes and you got to wriggle around a different way to get there. And it's like, you may still be headed towards Hawaii or wherever it may be, but the path to get there sometimes needs to take a little diversion to get there effectively.
Some of us have larger diversions than others.
Yeah.
So some of us go off in the opposite direction. We head to the Far East in order to get over to Hawaii.
Yeah. If you keep going far enough, you'll eventually wrap around and get there.
You'll get there. Yeah, exactly.
but to me, that is by sort of following that, when I was younger and got out of school, it was assumed I would go to work for my father in the insurance agency, and there wasn't a discussion. It would be stupid for me to do anything else, so I'm going to get work. It just was an assumption in my little town that I'm going to get working in. And both of you know me pretty well. Now imagine me sitting in an insurance office for 40 hours a week, adding up car insurance policies.
That's right up there with eating out of a dumpster, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It's worse. It is a more traumatic event. The dumpster's way down. So I went to work for my dad, and the probably not. And I can't think of a job that would be much worse for my brain to go to work in. So I'm working in an environment that was miserable. If anytime I would even sort of suggest to somebody, I don't know if this is right for me, everybody, oh, you're crazy. You make all that money. You're going to own the company one day. My goodness, you can't, and I'm like, yeah, they're right. And so I would sort of quash it in his feelings. And then somewhere along the way, I, sort of developed this little gambling addiction thing that, eventually it solved it for me in a weird way. Dad fired me for all that stuff. And, but again, if I'm not advocating for doing it the way I did it, but I couldn't imagine still wrapping up that career, sitting behind that desk for 40 years. I probably wouldn't be alive, or I'd be horribly addicted to everything, and would already be in jail for some other reason. But it just, the chain of events that allowed me to move away. The goals that I set were just based on artificial programming at the time. Like right now, I don't know where I'm going to end up. I know what I love to do. We had a show a few weeks ago where I went down to Anna Maria Island, and it's a different place than I remember. It's very crowded. And I sort of made a decision. The property that we have down there, we're going to probably just sell, and I'm not going to retire there, or not go down there. That wasn't sad. I just realized that that's been the automatic default place to go for years. And, I'm looking for property up at Smith Mountain Lake. And there's actually some Ozark Lake in Missouri. I have some friends out there. So I'm looking all over the country. I don't know where that's going to be. And I'm still here, but you never know. I'm open to these ideas now. I'm not stuck on any one destination. I'm open to the concept of whatever.
Right. So let's take that as an opening then. Let's take that as an opportunity to discuss, well, clearly you have adopted very successfully the ability to shift your mindset.
Yeah.
And you've made choices that would not be choices most people would make in the circumstances. Many people would just kind of, continue to spiral out of control, or some similar effect to that. So the question becomes, how do you make that change? How do you make that shift?
And what shift? To be able to live that way?
Yeah, to make the kind of choices where you're feeling good about where your life is going. You're not in fear all the time. You're not spiraling out of control. You're not continuing an addiction. You're actually living a life that is enjoyable and worthwhile and satisfying and fulfilling.
I'll give you my opinion. I'd love to hear Ken's on this, but for me, when you live in addiction, your central nervous system is always in fight or flight. You're constantly in fight. It never slows down. So you become used to living in fight or flight. You're anything that happens, you're expecting the worst case scenario. You're preparing to, even when you get in recovery, that central nervous system is still doing that. And as I started, after there was a period of time, 1995 is when I got into recovery. And it wasn't until probably early 2000s that I really felt like I was in recovery. I didn't gamble for all those years, but I was still struggling. I was still living in fight or flight. There was a lot going on. And then I eventually sort of learned some new concepts. And then when I realized, wait a minute, I'm approaching this all wrong. Once I realized and started accepted, the law of attraction, this whole concept of perspective, I'm in charge of my perspective. And then I don't know how long this takes scientifically, but my central nervous system finally it went from permanent fight or flight to often at rest. And then but there would still be periods of time where something would happen and I could quickly return to that fight or flight. The concept I don't know if I have fight or flight left at all. I mean, I don't think maybe it's there, but there's not anything left to upset me. I have enough money to live the rest of my life. I'm in perfect health. I'm in the gym every day. I have the life that I love right now. Justin's going to be graduating high school, and I'll have some decisions to make where I'm going, where he's going to school and all that. But really, I'm just open to the idea of whatever. But it took a long time. I think the learning to calm your central nervous system is the beginning of this process. I don't know if Ken agrees with that, but that's lost in addictive behavior, or in some people, it's not even addiction. But when you're constantly in stress-filled anxiety, and you that becomes an addictive state unto itself. And being able to calm from that, then you're able to, oh, wait a minute, everything is okay. And that's a better way to live. But I'd like Ken's input on it as well.
I fully agree with everything you just said. And so, but I'm going to add another path up the mountain, another angle of the same perspective, that pulling back to the theme about, living on autopilot all the time. I may be on autopilot that I'm in fight or flight. The question is, how or when do I wake up and realize, wait a minute, I'm on fight or flight mode for a moment. I'm in a place where I'm having a perceptual shift from a fear-based world to I'm able to choose to see things differently than how I've been seeing it. I'm able to shift from seeing this in a judgment and fear-based, triggering that fight or flight, to a perceptual shift to this is an opportunity. This is hope. Life right now is great, as good as it can be, and it's going to get better. And I trust that. So the shift comes almost in an instant of being able to change that perspective from crisis to opportunity, and then repeat, and then repeat, and then repeat. Because otherwise we're going to get pulled back into that, Joel just described it really well. We're going to keep getting pulled back to that old fight or flight, fear-based, judgment-based, habitual mindset. How do I keep steering? Kind of like I drive a little bit and eventually the car kind of steers off. Oh yeah, keep correcting. Whenever I'm driving, there's always just this little bit of tension where I'm trying to keep back to I'm in control. I'm aware that I'm in control second by second, and steering towards what's the opportunity here? Where's the pleasure here? Where's the growth here? So it builds me forward.
There's another piece that occurs to me that actually came up in a conversation from a prior episode. A guest who was on recently, she pointed out that I guess these days psychological studies and especially positive psychology, they're studying a lot about how do we learn things, how do we do things, how do we exchange things with others, how do we interchange energy, all this kind of stuff going on. One of the things that they apparently have nailed down is how long it takes to actually change a habitual pattern in your nervous system. Apparently it's 62 to 67 days. I didn't know that. So okay, well, that's a lot of days. That's like a little over 2 months. And I kind of get the impression that the presumption behind that is doing the new behavior or ingraining the new behavior into the nervous system every single day for 62 to 67 days. I mean, I can just imagine, especially for somebody dealing with an addiction, that is almost like an impossible hurdle to overcome it, or so it seems. But even for just, the rest of us who aren't necessarily addicted to something, just trying to make a shift in our thought patterns for a continuous run of 62 to 67 days. Oh, that's exhausting to think about it.
Yeah.
It's no wonder it's so challenging to make this kind of a change in our lives.
Right.
So how do you handle that?
Well, forget about what the insurance company says, but what the data says and what the National Institute of Health says is that we know that it actually takes 90 days to begin to turn the curve on addiction.
Wow.
It's not different than much other thing, and it the improvements go up even thereafter. So sometimes folks even stay a little longer, and that's not saying in residential, you're going to have some folks will have a residential period, then they'll have an outpatient period, so you're taking the training wheels off. But exactly to your point, I'm building a practice there. I'm building a practice of that gratitude. This is a life practice. I think it may last for another 30 years, and I can't conceive of that on day one. But I've stopped gambling on day one. I've stopped using my alcohol on day one. So it's just snowballing to the positive, getting easier and easier each day of those 60, 90, however many days we do it. It's the first days of a lifetime of this new habit.
So if we bring in the theme that we started with here, the theme of milestones, do we include milestones in that?
Well, yeah, why not? In the 12-step tradition, there's a heavy focus on you made it this many days, you made it this many days, and celebrating the milestones, but it's celebrating the wins in life. It doesn't have some of them, I don't want to say arbitrary, but they're markers to remind us that we're going in the right path. Kind of like when I'm driving down the road, there's a mile marker every mile. it's a celebration. I made it that much. When you never been on a long trip and you're driving, it's like, okay, 1 more mile down. All right, 1 more mile down. Yeah, and so everything is that little tiny bit of pleasure if we can choose to see it that way, rather than, oh my gosh, 722 miles left to go.
That's usually the message to me, that it's time for me to pull over in a rest area for about a half an hour, because I'm in trouble if I'm counting miles at that point.
Absolutely.
Of course, my brain likes to take those miles as a challenge and see how fast I can do that mile. So if it's 1 mile, oh no, how fast can I do this mile? Let's time this thing. So you can imagine that's not always fun to ride with me, but
you're the one I stay away from on the highway. I'm just saying,
yeah, it's like, oh, so you're suggesting 70 miles an hour is sort of the, let's see, if I do 96, how much does that shorten the trip? Let's do the math. So
I just wanted to say, for the record, we're not recommending traveling at 96 miles an hour on the highway. Just for the record.
But if you do, you will get there faster. But don't do that.
Yeah.
Do as we say, not as we do. No, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But
That's a math experiment.
It was. But all kidding aside, the subconscious reprogramming is the key to all this.
Yeah.
And just like we're saying, it is a repetitive reprogramming and the new pathways that develop in that new. So the longer someone who's been in long-term addiction is in a recovery program, I know 30 days, that's 28 days is what the insurance company says you need. That's just, again, an arbitrary number. That could be a good starting point maybe, but nothing really changes in the brain. And you're in an environment where you sort of have to stop your addiction because you're sort of locked up, so to speak. Then, what's better is like a transitional living or a halfway or a sober living or whatever training you went home, where you can actually live in society and sort of testing's a bad word, but be exposed to those triggers and still maintain sobriety or abstinence. And then the brain starts to accept that as the new normal. Again, in August of 1995 is when I placed my last bet. And the concept of that to me was, for a year, it was white knuckling, I'm not going to gamble. And again, this isn't, I don't want to trigger anyone that's in short-term recovery, but I've been in recovery a while. I wouldn't gamble if you gave me $100,000 to go gamble. I don't have a desire. I don't have to fight it. It is so shut off of my brain. In fact, the thought of gambling would make me want to throw up. It did so much damage. So my brain no longer is operating as somebody in active addiction. You eventually shut those pathways off. I wouldn't challenge this because for a lot of reasons, but I could meet you guys in Vegas, and if you wanted to go downstairs and gamble, I could go do something else. I'm not doing that. I don't like to challenge things like that. But it doesn't. It triggers people in recovery when they hear this. But you get to a point where it's just not going to happen again. It's just not an opportunity. That's not real popular in the addiction field. I'm not claiming to be cured from my addiction. I don't tip myself, and I don't do that. But I do not have the same brain that existed in August of 1995. I'm not the same person.
Right.
Yeah. I appreciate that too, because I think anybody who's ever traveled and you end up in some place where there's a casino, you're walking through the casino because that's what they want you to walk through. They want you to see this thing. I have in the past enjoyed playing online poker. I walked past the poker pit, and there's like this huge negative vibe coming from, like, you couldn't drag me over there. I enjoy playing online poker, but in the casino with the energy, the really negative vibe that's going on over there, you'd have to put me in handcuffs to get me over there. That's how rough the feeling is.
Right.
So I guess there is a built-in energy that happens with all of these things that if we can notice, it helps us to turn things around. But apparently it doesn't always work because people become addicts. They still, despite all that stuff, it's almost like there's a familiarity there. Oh yeah, I recognize that vibe. I'm going to that vibe.
Sure. And go ahead, Ken.
It becomes feeding too. So same principle, taking out of addiction for just a second. Pick any emotion, anxiety, for example. If I'm living my life in fear, all of a sudden people know and respond to me. My social circle surrounds me with people with that vibe, for example, that feed. Yeah, Ken lives his life in anxiety. So day one, I choose to see things differently, and I'm not living in that fear. And all of a sudden, day 5, the people around me are saying, "Hey, Ken, you're supposed to be anxious."
Yeah,
and try and push me back a little bit. Day 10, I'm getting a habit. You see what starts happening here, and so now at a certain point, I may start having to build different relationships with my friends, or with some people may leave that relationship, freeing me. So I've start with this external behavior. It may have to change my world a bit to transform around that recovery lifestyle, happy lifestyle, solution-focused lifestyle. And then once I'm doing it, the behaviors for a bit, it starts to internalize, it starts to imprint in my brain to exactly to where Joel's talking, that at some point, as I can forgive and release some of those old memories, so their memories, their learnings, their springboards, rather than chains still holding me back. That's goes from an external work to a much deeper internal work. And again, all respect to the insurance companies, but sometimes we need to do things a little longer than the insurance companies think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no doubt about that. And yet when we do that work and we get to a point where we have made that shift, like you said, life ends up shifting because it reminds you guys may like the same cartoon. For years, I was a fan of the Far Side cartoon, Gary Larson's famous series.
Classics. Yeah.
Classic. Absolutely classic. My absolute favorite Far Side cartoon of all time is a frame of A Shot from Hell. And there are these two devils who are obviously supervising all the people in hell, and there are flames all over the place. And there's this guy with a push broom in the middle of hell. He's pushing the broom and he's whistling and he's having a great time and pushing his broom and all this kind of stuff. And the one devil turns to the other and says, "I don't think we're getting through to this guy." But that's what it's like. You get to a point where all of a sudden you made such a big change that you just don't even fit into the scene anymore.
No. Yeah. And then all of a sudden the people that you're with, that'll be really frustrating to those onlookers. So they're either going to get, go the other way, and you're going to start attracting people that will be like-minded. And it's like all of a sudden you enjoy a conversation with people that are of that new, whistling at the day kind of perspective.
Yeah.
So it starts to pull you forward in a way that's makes it easier and easier.
And one of the things I took from that particular cartoon, one of the reasons I liked it so much, is that for me, it was a reminder, anytime that I feel out of step, it probably means I'm not going to be there much longer.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And when you condition your mind and you live a certain way, and and I love that analogy because my people that I used to participate in drama with, or negative, always awfulizing and worst case scenario people, and I could find myself in that, or people that talk about politics and how the country's falling apart, all those things. Those are things that I represented that, and I believe some of that stuff. And once I started progressing beyond that, those people just naturally fall off. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the most fun person in the world. If your entertainment from me was to agree on all the negative things and talk about fearful stuff, I am not your person. I am not the person to hang out with. It is at all, because it's just me. I'm like, okay, I mean, so let's. I don't go there. And to me, automatically, I have to be very careful. I tell anytime somebody says, "Hey, I lost my job," I'm like, "Well, congratulations." I have to tone that.
Oh, he's one of those people. Yeah. Okay.
I'm like, well, great job. Are you kidding? I lost my job. Well, now we can get rolling. Okay, let's see what happens. But that is so much becomes that perspective. One of my favorite quotes, and I always post this several times a year, I post on Facebook. When you're worrying about why all this and what, the idea of you've been assigned this mountain to prove that it can be moved. You go through these things so people can say, oh my God, look what this guy went through, and look at his attitude right now. And I take that even further. The first mountain is very hard to move. It's a lot of work. Everyone after that, the mountains just get the hell out of your way. They don't even, they're not mountains anymore. There's no mountains after the first one. That's the secret. The first, you become so confident in that journey. There's just not a mountain left.
If somebody were watching, they'd come up and say, wow, how'd you move that mountain? And you'd reply, what mountain?
Well, it doesn't, you can't see it because you just know that no matter what happens, the right thing, it's going to be to your advantage no matter where this goes. The seemingly we're going to, my job every day is to get up, do the stuff that I do, be passionate about my life, do that. And sometime, likely, I still have no proof of this, but in the next 50 years, for say, I'm probably not going to wake up. Okay, we're just saying that might be an opportunity, it might be the case. But until then, I'm going to go do it this way. It's a pretty simple way to live it.
Yeah. And right there, that it's just such a articulation of the mental focus there. I am looking for the option. I'm not seeing the barriers in life. I'm seeing the opportunities. I'm seeing through to the possibilities. And that's how I'm going to live today. I'm going to live today with a smile, with a bit of exercise, with a bit of happy, with a bit of relationships, with a little and openness, rather than fear and judgment and shame and withdrawal. It's like it's determining to see the path forward rather than being stuck in the past.
Yeah, in fact, when you take that attitude, there's really no time for judgment anymore. I mean, there's the blame becomes like a waste of energy. It may previously have been something that you were really invested in, but all of a sudden, once you make this mind shift, it's like, why would I want to do that? That's boring.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's another cartoon. I don't think it's a Far Side one, but there's a old story of the, they go take on a tour to hell, and they see at the table is this huge feast with all the most delicious foods, and everybody around the table is snarling and gnashing their teeth and emaciated and starving, sitting in front of this feast. And there's these huge spoons that are about 6 feet long, and it's like, oh, I can't get the food. It's right there, but I can't get it. They went up to heaven and the same feast and the same silverware, but people were all happy and engaged. And they said, what happened? People learn to feed each other. We learn to work together rather than being stuck in that mindset of lack and I can't reach this. And so perspective matters, no matter what the situation is.
It's a great illustration because that perspective does matter. It doesn't seem like it when you're in that not so enjoyable perspective. When you're stuck there, it doesn't seem like it, but it really does matter. What were you saying, Joel?
Well, I love that, what Ken just pointed out, because so much of it is, everything that exists. When you wake up in the morning, that's the opportunity right there. You're awake, and then not everybody's been afforded that opportunity. So start with that, and then you go do whatever. And when you sort of approach it that way. And again, I have. It isn't that I'm not aware that there's a lot of stuff going on in life. I know a lot of people are struggling, and I know all that stuff. It isn't that I'm not aware of it. I'm just aware of that. I can choose to literally tune my filters for what I want to see. I can tune my filters for what I want to attract, and it's just automatic. I know there's stuff going on. I'm not living in a world where I'm not aware of problems. I work, most of my pro bono cases are involving foster care kids. So I'm very aware of what's going on. But my message, even to the foster kids, I've shared this before, they're incredibly resilient people, Once they change their perspective, their life changes. Even within foster care, 10-year-olds can change their entire life by changing their perspective. The reality is some of it's being dictated to them because they're 10, but once they change their perspective, amazing things start to happen. And that's the exciting piece to me, that we believed. I think most of us were brought up, and society tends to think, I've had multiple people tell me sometimes, Joel, you don't face reality. And, and I say, I do. And I'm stealing this directly from Abraham Hicks. I just choose the reality I'm facing. It's that's the case. And then that becomes my reality. I don't have anxiety. I don't have stress. I go to the gym every day. All the things I'm able to do, and I just shockingly, it just keeps unfolding in a way that I love my life, and I keep. And do I have bad moments? Of course, I'll have bad moments, but I quickly can reframe. One of my favorite tools, and somewhere along this equation, I wanted to hop in with this, but I forget who was talking about it. But when how do we know when we're sort of pulling away from this mindset we're trying to be? Again, in Law of Attraction by Abraham Hicks, they talk about the emotional guidance scale. Right. And I always, and I do an inventory, and you can create your own emotional guidance scale. There's no rules, you follow theirs. But knowing where your emotion is right now is all you need to know. And you can't go from suicidally depressed to the ultimate joy usually, but you can seek the next level up in that emotional guidance scale, and then you can work your way up that ladder. So throughout the day, I'm very seldom, let's say there's 1 to 20 being terrible, 1 being great. Very seldom in a day I'm ever below a 6 or a 7. I mean, it doesn't go lower than that. But let's just say, but if I do identify it, I start working on that emotion. I fix that first. And then the rest of the stuff gets in line. I start, what am I anxious about? What is going on? Where is this coming from? Do I not feel well? Is there something? I really want to stop my day and adjust that before going forward. That's a big tool for me. I don't know if it works for everybody else, but I use that tool every day.
Yeah. Totally agree. If on day one, to our point earlier, on day one of getting out of an addiction process, I can't conceive of 90 days or 10 years, and that's okay. But it's kind of like a tuning fork. If I'm at an emotion of a 20, I can't see beyond that. And so, okay, so let's get to 19. Let's get to 18. Yes. Take it a step in the direction. It's almost like a tuning fork. You've got to take it a step closer, and kind of hone the way forward.
Great point. There's a point within this too, talking about milestones having a sort of a reverse effect. I'm very adamant. I used to have to tiptoe around this. I don't tiptoe around this. I am not a fan of 12-step programs. I think they're terrible. So let me be clear. If it works for you, keep doing it. But I just think they have the opposite effect. So,
come on, Joel, tell us what you really think. I mean, don't hold back like that.
It took all these years of my career not to have to tiptoe around that. I felt this a long time, but so anyway, I'm on the record as saying that, and I can get into why later, but that's not why I'm here. The point is, when you talk about milestones, 12-step programs, they want to give you a 30-day congratulations. They want to give you a month, 6 month, and a year. Do you know statistically at the 90-day and the 1 year mark and the 5 year mark, there are drastic increases in relapse surrounding those days?
Interesting.
It's then it does skew the other way after 5 years, but it's very, very common at the 90-day or the 1 year mark for relapses to happen. At my 1 year anniversary, we celebrated at a Gamblers Anonymous meeting in Florida. My whole family showed up. It was the first time I'd seen them in a year. It was very emotional. And I was like, wow, this is great. Things are great. And, I went back to my transitional living home, sleeping in the bedroom with this, this nasty old house, and going to my crappy little job. And nothing really changed. I had this depressive period after my 1 year. I didn't relapse, but I can see where that energy goes. So I'm a big proponent of, it's great if you know when your recovery date is. I have no problem knowing it, but the only relevant day in recovery is today. in my opinion, the only relevant day. If you're new in recovery, you have the exact same amount of time as I do in my world. And now, but also understanding your subconscious brain there's still one day. There is relevance to those days in other areas, but tracking them as milestones never seemed logical to me. And when I go to meetings now, sometimes I'll go, with a client or for whatever reason, I show up at one of these meetings, and I don't like to say my clean date, not because I'm embarrassed about it. It's just, these people are dealing with 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 26 years. I mean, they're probably going, "Oh my God, dude, what's up?" I talk about right now, and I say right now is your relevant day. The 12-step meetings have a tendency to talk about negative over and over and over and over again. I like to hear about what's now. If you got 26 years, tell me what's going on now. You don't need to hear my war story. You need to hear my success story.
Right.
So there's something out there with that.
Yeah, I love that. And you made reference to the emotional guidance scale earlier. Anne-Marie McEwen's been contributing here in the live stream. She made an important point. She said the emotional scale is so important. When I recognize that I'm low, I try to remember to pivot to the positive and take baby steps to a better emotion, usually through gratitude. And that really summarizes it beautifully. But when she wrote that, it also reminded me of something, because you said something else, Joel. You said you don't have to go with the Abraham Hicks emotional guidance scale. You can use whatever scale you want. And that was a big thing for me, realizing that was true. Because we talked about that guidance scale for years here on the show. I've talked with other people about other scales and so forth. And I realized that for me, I'm not speaking about anybody else, but for me, all of them kind of didn't really work as well as they could. And the reason was they're all about trying to identify, well, what's my current emotional state? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling positive, optimistic, bored, depressed? Where am I? And it would just drive me nuts. So I finally simplified it. My guidance scale has 3 steps on it. It's where I am now, better, and worse. Those are my steps. So here I am right now. What would make me feel better? I go for better. And then I reach that point. That's my new now. Okay, now there's better and there's worse. Now, that makes it easy. I can handle that one. Yeah. But you asked me, what am I feeling? I actually have a coach I've been working recently. She has like a 500-step scale, all the different possible words you can use to describe what you're feeling. And I said, don't even show that to me. You're going to drive me nuts with that.
Well, and that's why it's so important. I always explain to clients, I want you to, just like you did, I want you to, there's no magical number, or emotions in your emotional guidance scale. It could be just feelings. It could be, I know a young man that he sees things in color. So he has emotional guidance scale that's only in color, and his goal is to see the higher color.
That's
Works
cool.
for him.
I like that.
It's very cool. And because I do a lot when I'm working with somebody, I try to determine, are they more visual, or are they more, do they do better hearing? And so we look for stuff that hits their best way of observing and learning. And his was color. And for me, I have emotions and stuff attached to it, but I also know what works for me. Like they talk about in Abraham Hicks, it's very, very depressed and you're stuck. For many people, it sounds negative, but anger is a step above that. Not to live in anger, but go to anger and then get action mode on the anger, and then you can go from there. So you can use those tools, but you get to develop because it's all individual based. They're very clear about that. Esther talks about this several times. She's saying, when we gave those out the first time, people were thinking we were saying these are the rules, and that's not what we're saying. We're saying these are examples of what happened, but you create your own emotional guidance scale, and it doesn't have to be, it could be 5 things, or it could be you, good, better, worse, whatever. And just the goal is that next letter, that tiny step up the ladder, like Anne-Marie said, very, very, positively, whatever that next step up the ladder is. And then you can get there incrementally. You can't generally make drastic jumps.
Yeah. Those drastic jumps, they'll kill you every time. I mean, that's a joke, but it's also true.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. I mean, you aim for one of those big jumps, especially if you're in that depressed state or anger, or someplace really, really depressed like that. Not only will you not get there, but you'll actually feel more trapped because now you're aiming for a goal you can't even reach.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Good to have the goal, but you have to live in the present in the steps that it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all again, all perspective based. The life of perspective just allows you to pivot every day, to see what's going on, to choose, this is how I'm looking at it. And, I've shared this. I have one of my favorite client, weird that I work with this group, but, I have a group of 20 to 25-year-old females that somehow they're stuck in they jumped into my client base somehow. Never sought them out, but they just somehow randomly showed there. I didn't have anything in common with them, but I find them fascinating. They're hilarious, and I enjoy working with them. So they're also, not to be stereotypical, they're generally very dramatic. So one time I got this text on a Friday night from this young lady. She goes, "Oh my God, the worst possible thing happened. Do you have a minute to talk?" And so I just texted back and said, "Oh my God, how long do you have to live?" Goes, "What?" I go, "Well, you said the worst possible thing happened, and that would be you dying." So she said, "You're an asshole. Can you call me?" Yeah. So it's just the idea that we have a tendency to, like within all that, I love working with that population because, again, they respond very well. And I've worked with young guys forever, but I didn't work with young ladies for a long time. I found I have a pretty good connection with them as well. So that's a population that and they always make me laugh. And again, we have nothing in common. And it's surprising how well it flows with them. I enjoy them.
I'm just sitting here with, "You're an asshole. Can I call you?"
Yeah. Now, Walt, this may be shocking to you. He wasn't the first one to call me an asshole.
But if you can get somebody to that laugh, it breaks them out of that mental block.
Well, that's what she said. She said, believe it or not, that's exactly when we were talking. It was a boyfriend problem, and a very unhealthy boyfriend problem. So we once we got talking, she said, "No, it really, when you did that, it literally reset me immediately, because you're right. I'm making it like this is the end of the world, and I'm married to this. I'm not married. I'm dating this heroin addicted guy that stood me up tonight. He's in the hospital." And she's like, "Yeah, I have to adjust that perspective." So good news is she eventually moved on. She's not dating unhealthy guys anymore. But it was it was a therapeutic tool, because she, in her mind, that was the worst thing that could be going on at any time.
Yeah.
And when I asked her how long she had to live, she's like, "What?"
Good for her too, by the way. Congratulations to her for having the self-honesty to realize, okay, yeah, all right, I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. That's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're in the middle of the emotion of the moment. That's pretty tough to do.
Yeah. So the several of my female clients have referred other female clients to me, and one of them said one time, the person she referred told me this. She said, "Yeah, she told me that you're really good at the solution thing, but you're not really good at the crying ice cream thing."
That's awesome.
And I said, "Yeah." I said, I said, "I want to put that on my website."
Yeah. That's a testimonial if I ever heard one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Ken, first of all, I got to thank you once again for rejoining us, and I'm hoping we can, kind of coerce you. Maybe we'll put you in handcuffs and drag you back here. Maybe, I don't know. Is that the only way we can get here? I don't know what it takes, but we'd love to have you come back.
Don't take handcuffs.
Oh, okay. All right.
All good. I'll be happy to.
Oh, okay. Well, geez, why don't I just ask?
Great conversation. You just ask. Being around good people attracts wanting to be around good people.
Yeah.
The whole theme of the conversation too. Just it pulls you forward.
Very true. Very true. And Joel, I just need to acknowledge one more time. And like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, you were my 12th interview back in 2012. And God, I don't know how many shows we've done since then. More than I can count. Let's put it that way. but it just seemed appropriate. You were here for episode 2000, which was a couple weeks ago. Now you're here for the 11th anniversary. So it's just one more opportunity to thank you for one more milestone that you're a part of my life here on LOA Today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for doing the show, Walt. You bring a conversation to the table that I think is very helpful. You were instrumental in my growth in the law of attraction, as Ken was as well. I value your friendship, and I look forward to continually being involved in just everything. Watching, having you in my life is a blessing, as I'm sure many of our audience members are grateful for as well.
So there it is, folks. That's the final word. You are now stuck with us for the next 10 years. Thank you so much. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.